So that was Shireen with the CII panel. So a big thumbs up from corporate India. That is what they are getting. But we'll have to hear from the opposition what they have to say. Let's first start with Shashi Tharoor.
The fact is that it doesn't seem to have very much for the Aam Aadmi or the middle class. And certainly the poor have largely been left out. So it is a budget that is looking at the bigger picture, looking at what's attractive to corporates and investors. The problem with this government has been consistently that they're very good at making speeches and giving us a broad vision, and they're much less good when it comes to actually delivering implementation.
We have the HRD Minister, Smriti Irani, with us. But if you just starting to come in, we also find this is corporate friendly budget and nothing really much for the Aam Aadmi.
When you give 1 rupee premium accident benefit of 2 lakhs, is that a corporate budget? When you push a pensionless economy towards a pension economy, is that a corporate budget? When you give tax relief and in fact support savings by the middle class, is that a corporate budget? I think that the opposition is extremely wanting in terms of some effective tool to attack the government. That is why they are indulging in spreading of misinformation.
So those were the reactions coming in. Let's get in our experts right away. Dr. Virmani, what do you think as far as your rating is concerned? It looks like a wholesome bread, isn't it, with all the right ingredients thrown in, but not the Italian kind this time around.
Well, yeah, Ajay has already given you the social side, so let me give the job and growth side.
But first we'll have to rate it.
Do I have to rate it?
Yes, it's there right there in front of you.
Well, I would say it's good to very good.
Okay, so you'll have to pick it up and show.
I don't know, okay.
Yeah.
So that will be good to excellent.
Good to excellent.
Oh, good to excellent. Well, that's a bit difficult then. Okay, I'll hold both up. So, you know, what the FM said, he's concluded by saying is consistent with what we have been saying and doing. That's really kind of sums it up for me. That the whole approach of this government have been pragmatic, practical, steady as you go.
Right.
Which is the initial impression which leads to the good. But then if I look a little deeply, if you give me a few minutes, you know, there are some very interesting new things in a sense. One, for example, he talks about encouraging port corporatization. Now, when finance minister encourages that, hopefully something will happen. There is bankruptcy code. You know, we've been discussing, I personally and probably Shankar also, bankruptcy code for I don't know how many decades. So if he can accomplish that, that would be a big achievement. Of course, it has to be implemented. Then financial market reform, there's a number of things there. For example, again, FMC merging into SEBI. Again, those of us who are insiders know what a great task that has been. Again, a couple of decades, the two of us have been trying to do that and did not succeed. Then compliance, much more on the complier rather than having this control regulatory mechanism. So there are a number of things like that. There are, of course, standard things which we were expecting on GST, etc. So I won't mention them. But in some sense, the vision thing here is the tax reform. He is reiterating and that's good. You have to. The new government has what has kind of become the economist consensus, if I may call it, on simplifying tax rate, reducing exemptions, and reducing rates to make them more competitive with Asia. So that is why I kind of fall between two stools. If you look at it as it came in, I was thinking it's just good. But if you dig a little deeper, one moves a little more towards the excellent side.
You certainly managed to dig really deep. Budget meter also saying the same. Most people are happy. Majority of the people are rating it as good. What do you think, Vivek, as far as specifics are concerned? Are we on track for above 8% growth that has been promised?
So first, I will also rate the budget. So I think I rated excellent. For the reason that I think this is the first exposition that we've seen from this government which is not lacking in specifics. We've always seen a lot of bold talk, a lot of vision laid out by the government. This time I think it has been backed by very concrete and very achievable steps. So for example, if we see on the tax side, he's indicated a clear move to GST. He's brought service tax at 14%, which also indicates the move to GST. He's announced a set of bold steps with respect to the entire black money problem. So he's declared his intent to tackle it with effective and implementable steps. On the tax side, I think whatever were the problems with the that we were facing in the tax system with respect to fresh investments, which were REITs, for example. Lots of money waiting to come into India held up because of the REIT taxation problem. That's been solved. Indirect transfers, that's been solved. So for me, the big win on this budget is I see a lot of specifics which we were earlier not seeing from this government. 2 days back, the rail budget, I thought great exposition of vision, but lacking in the specifics for investing 8.5 lakh crores. This budget, I think very good in vision, consistent with what they've been saying, and yet, for the first time, we're seeing a lot of specific steps, which is why I rated excellent.
Right. As you look at what's expensive and what's cheaper, one thing that's expensive, Swapanda, is going out now, because of the service tax. But I'm glad I just got my press club membership after 15 years, so I should be I should be okay with that.
I mean, would you like to be a member of that club?
I already am. I can't help it. Okay. On a serious note, Swapanda, you're talking about the social welfare net, what he has done, increased it, a pension, insurance for ₹1 per day. It's incredible. These are interesting things that people would want to see.
You see, I think there are two issues here. Okay, now you can say that this is a sob, this is one of those giveaways, etc. But if you look at the larger principle behind it, which is that you are firstly trying to make it possible for a welfare system to come in place and establish the principle of individual contribution and not exclusively a state-funded thing.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the West, one of the biggest problems which the West has been burdened with is the question of how do you run the health sector and how do you run old age pensions. This has been draining their entire budget. People have gone bankrupt. And yet, this is an urgent need because in India there's almost a minimum, if non-existent, welfare net. So I think at least we've seen the beginnings, and I will stress it. We've seen the beginnings, modest steps. Now they need to work on this over the years, and at least get people into the habit of actually contributing to pension funds.
Right.
To actually contributing towards health insurance, create the larger structures for it. So that, to my mind, is a very, very positive step.
Yeah.
And this, I think that at every point, politically, I think this government was very, very mindful that there's been a lot of taunt about it being excessively pro-corporate, which Smriti Irani was talking about. And they've been taunted by this. And I think there was a conscious realization that in terms of at least packaging the budget, they must try to be as even-handedly as possible.
Right.
And Mr. Jaitley, who has an image of being very industry-friendly and not necessarily that of a populist,
right,
I think had to don a new sort of garb, and he's tried to sort of reinvent himself partially.
Right. I'm also told that the finance minister is speaking in Rajya Sabha. We will head there in a bit to listen to him. But Dr. Shankaracharya, if you stay with the pension fund, Atal Pension Yojana, the government giving 50%, I think it's limited to 1 year, till 1 year. So just like Jan Dhan Yojana, it's an idea to get more and more people. And if you have an incentive like this in the first year, that 50% of your premium is paid by the government, then you will attract a lot of people to come in, and it will just create more money there in that fund.
Potentially, yes, Karma. And I think 50% sounds fine if you can actually take it away later at some point. I was a little more worried about, what Shobhan said about the accident insurance fund, where, for 12 rupees a year, as I got it, 1 rupee per month, you get effectively insurance for 2 lakhs. And that seemed to me, involves a pretty big subsidy to begin with. And as the thing rolls out, it could become an open-ended issue as to whether you can raise the 12 rupees to cover a higher percentage as time passes. Otherwise, it will be a big hole. Can I just make one other kind of way of looking at some of the things in the budget? I think actually it's, if you look at I was going through my notes, if you look at all the things he said, it's it's a very rich and in some ways challenging legislative agenda that he's laid out. I mean, I just made a list of about 9 or 10 crucial laws that he sort of announced, which have to go through Parliament at some point for this stuff to be effective. One, the Monetary Policy Committee that he announced. Good idea, but requires amendment of the RBI Act. Regulatory reform law, to make it more uniform across sectors. The Public Contracts Dispute Resolution law. The bankruptcy law, which I entirely agree with, I think, what Arvind said earlier. If done well, it would be path-breaking. Getting it through Parliament, big challenge. He talked about unified market for agriculture. Again, a great goal. I'm not sure whether he had legislative intent in mind, but probably. New laws on black money, both one law for the foreign stuff, and I got the impression a different law for the domestic stuff, in real estate and so on and so forth, Benami and all that. Now, on the foreign one, in principle very good and certainly plays to the gallery. I mean, in the sense everybody expects follow through on what you've been saying in campaign trail and so on. But I would only hold out one important caution, which is that if it is not done well, it could end up being highly discouraging of capital coming in and out. If you have all sorts of if you like, too many cops getting into it, you can get a kind of legislation which would deter the kind of capital sort of freedom that I think the government wants. Look at laws on the Indian Financial Code, which is also promised. New procurement law, and of course the good old GST. Now that's a huge legislative agenda, and it's certainly not lacking in specifics, but I would say it's pretty challenging.
Right. It is challenging considering, Rajya Sabha and the strength they have in the Rajya Sabha. And as you predicted earlier, Shobhanda, the markets have gone to the red on pretty lines. But will it be tough to push through these bills?
Apart from the bankruptcy law, in which I think there will be some organized resistance, particularly because certain people have the BIFR route has become a very expedient vehicle. Yeah, exactly. You know that type of problem. But overall, there is nothing. These are of a very technical nature. There's nothing politically that contentious. I think the left is likely to oppose the provision, for example, which makes the individual's contribution to the Provident Fund and ESI voluntary.
Right.
Although it restates the employer's contribution. So I think that will be interpreted as an attempt to divert a lot of potential pension funds into the market.
But not sure, is it legislative or...
No, this is not a legislative. I'm saying in terms of political opposition.
I think you're right. If I just about it, both the ESIC Act and the Central Provident Fund Act will need to be amended to give this option to a worker to join one of the two.
Yeah.
No. You see, I think the employer's contribution to the Provident Fund will remain intact.
No,
as of now. But your individual contribution, if any, you can now opt out and they decide that, look, I'm going to play the markets or do whatever.
That itself is required.
But we'll have to see what happens in Parliament, because Trinamool might find reasons to oppose anything that the government proposes. That's one chance.
Trinamool will oppose everything. I think it's not a question of might finding reason. I think that's part of their approach.
Okay, with that, we'll just go into a very short break, come back with all the analysis right here on CNN IBN. Remember, you can tweet us at IBN Live with hashtag the Modi Budget, and you will get highlights on your handheld devices.